Hello, my name is Kevin Mullen. I'm the program manager here at Elitech Group Biomedical Systems, and today we're going to show you a video about using the Nanoduct system. But before we use it, I want to describe what the Nanoduct is. So when new, the Nanoduct comes in a nice carrying case like this, and this is the Nanoduct instrument. Also part of the carrying case is this calibration plate right here, and we'll show you how to use that here in a little bit. Some of the accessories that come with the Nanoduct is the electrode cable. This is the cable that will be attached to the Nanoduct instrument on one end and to the patient on the other end, and we'll show you how to use that in a little bit. This is the supply kit. In this kit there are instructions to the parent, just a minor risk about some burns, and some instructions for you to follow as the technician on how to properly perform a sweat test with the Nanoduct. Also in the kit are 6 sensor cells. So these are one-time use only, and they're disposable. So one kit can do 6 tests. Also part of the kit is a vial of 12 pilogel used for the Nanoduct. Again, we'll use 2 pilogel for each patient, so these are enough for 6 tests. Other items that come with the Nanoduct are a total of 6 straps, 3 sets of different sizes. There's a large size, a medium size, and small size. And so with each patient or each subject, the size may vary depending on the size of arm that the patient has. If you're testing mostly neonates and babies, obviously you'll use the small size. Some younger age children or teenagers may use the medium, or smaller adults and larger adults may use the larger size. To use the straps, we have these retaining posts and holders, and these are the holders that the sensor cell and the pilogel will go in, and you'll see how we use these when we demonstrate on a patient. Other items that you'll need to provide on your own is some DI water, some alcohol prep pads, some small applicator cotton swabs. DI water, maybe you can use either a beaker or a squirt bottle, either way, and some Kim wipes or some lint-free tissue to help dry the arm as you clean it. Now that I've described to you all the accessories and supplies that you'll need with the Nanoduct, I'll show you the proper use of the Nanoduct. And the first thing you do is you calibrate the Nanoduct. So you turn on the Nanoduct by pressing the on button, and it does a software boot up. You connect the cable to the top of the Nanoduct, and the cable is keyed, and so it can only fit one way, and it connects with a nice snap like you heard. To release the cable, you pull up on the gray portion of the cable like so. If you pull up on the blue portion, it won't release. So you pull up slightly on the gray portion and it will release, and that's how you release the cable. To attach it again, you just press straight down and you hear a nice snap. With the cable connected and the Nanoduct turned on, you'll see an arrow pointed towards check controls. You also see the date and time listed on the top part of the screen. The check control should be ran every day. That's used by plugging in the electrode cable, the sensor cell portion of the electrode cable, onto the calibration plate. And you should only do the electronic calibration. You should only do electronic calibration and never do liquid calibration. So I'll press enter to go into the check controls portion. The first value you should measure is the 80 value right here. That's the only value that you can calibrate on. And so we attach the sensor to the 80 value, and the screen, it'll show the value when it's attached, and it does read 80. I'm in the habit every day of still calibrating even though it reads 80. So I press select to move the arrow down to calibrate, and then I press enter. And it will go through a process of calibrating to the built-in resistance that's in the calibration plate. Okay, now it's calibrated. It's still reading 80. At this point, I will check all the other controls. It doesn't matter what order you do them in, so I'll do the 120 first and verify it's reading 120, which it is. Then I'll do the 60 and verify it's reading 60, which it is. And then I'll move it to the 40 and verify that it's reading 40, which it is. The tolerance value for this calibration plate and the Nanoduct is plus or minus 1. So as long as you're within plus or minus 1 of each of those values, then you can assume the Nanoduct is functioning properly and you're ready to do a sweat sample. So after calibration, the arrow is pointed toward exit. And I just hit enter, and that will take me back to the main screen. You'll see now the arrow has moved down from check controls to iontophoresis. And this is where we'll bring in the patient to perform the iontophoresis, the first step of the sweat test. Okay, before you do the iontophoresis, you should make sure that the sensor is unplugged from the calibration plate, and you can move the Nanoduct and the case to the side, and so the case is no longer in your way. So now we have a nice patient. This is Patty Nielsen, for those of you who talk to Patty on the phone or on emails. She's our subject today. So she's going to be our patient. We're using the medium-sized straps. The first thing you want to do is you want to connect the holders to the strap. And you do that by running one end of the strap through the connector, and then you run it through so there's a few holes in between, and you take the post and put it through like that. And we do that on both the red and the black holders. So run that through. Line up the holes and put a post through the rubberized straps, like so. Okay? Keep in mind I'm wearing gloves just so I don't contaminate the holders with any chloride ions, any salt that may be on my fingers. Also, the straps are latex free. That question comes to us a lot, but they are latex free. Before I attach the straps to the patient, I'm going to wash the patient's arm. So the first step in washing is to use the alcohol prep pads to wash the arm. We do that to remove any lotions or anything else that might have some chloride or other ionic ions in there. So we just wash that real well. Then we follow that with a Kim wipe and some water, and use ample amounts of water. Okay, and then after that we'll dry. So once it's dry, we're ready to apply the straps and get started. Before we apply the straps, we want to find a good location on the arm that doesn't have any obvious cuts or abrasions, and good healthy skin. We like to have the red holder, and thus the red electrode, that's where the sweat will be produced, as close to the wrist as possible, the forearm area. And so there's a good area right here. And so I'll put the strap on, and I bring the strap around, go through the other side of the connector. Now these straps can stick to the arm a little bit. Then you tighten the strap all the way to the other side and put it back onto the retaining post. You want it fairly tight. You want it so that the skin is kind of pillowed up inside of that inside of that holder. That means it's a good tightness, and you want that pillowing effect. So we'll also attach the black holder. The black holder should be an inch or so away. It doesn't really matter how far away it is from the red electrode. Usually I go up the arm, not closer to the wrist, to stay away from any tendons. So, as you probably observed, when I first tried to do the black strap, the strap was too small, so we had to go to the larger strap to fit the arm better. And so we put the holder there, run the strap around the arm, go through the holder, and then back around. Make sure it's nice and tight, again with the skin inside of the holder kind of bubbling, doing a little pillow effect. You'll notice when the straps are on the arm, they're keyed. And the top part, there's a ring that turns, okay? That ring is what's going to lock the electrodes into place, and also the sensor cell when we're ready for that. And so make sure that that turns freely, and when you observe that it turns freely, line it up so that the depressions or the edges of the part that turns lines up with the same depressions that's on the bottom part of the holder. So now that we have the straps in place, we're going to perform the iontophoresis. And so you notice on the electrodes there's a black and red electrode that are just a circle, and you'll put a disc in each one of those electrodes. So here's 2 discs. Oh, put it on the paper towel. So I put it into the black electrode, make sure it fits down tightly. Then I'll put that into the black holder, and you'll notice on these electrodes there's flanges that fit perfectly into the holder. You line that up and push down, and then you twist the ring about 45 degrees, and so it locks it in place. We'll do that with the red electrode as well. Put the disc in, and then twist the ring, and so it's locked in place. With the straps in the proper place on the patient's arm, we're ready to start the iontophoresis. Before we attach the electrodes, we're going to put a little drop of water. You can put a drop of water or a wet applicator strip and get the skin a little bit wet. That will assure good contact with the pilogel disc on the skin and good iontophoresis. And so we want a little bit of moisture there before we start. So then you take 2 discs out of the vial that I previously described, and 1 disc you'll put into the black electrode. You'll notice the holders of the electrode have little flanges that will mate up with the bottom part of the holder. And so I put in the holder like so and push down, and then I turn the ring about 45 degrees and make sure that that's locked into place. You can get a feel for how that does lock into place with a little bit of practice. I'll put another disc into the red electrode and do the same thing with the red holder. So again, push it down and turn the ring, and so it locks into place. Now with the electrodes in the holders and thus making contact with the skin and with the discs in place, always remember to have the discs there, we can now turn on the nanoduct with the arrow pointed towards iontophoresis. I can press enter, and it will begin the iontophoresis process. This takes 2.5 minutes, and it ramps up the current and then holds the current steady, and then we'll ramp down the current. You can see a little, so right now it says increasing current. And then it says full current now, and it has a progress bar going across. That progress bar is empty and gets filled up as it progresses. This is where the patient may feel a little tingling as the iontophoresis is occurring. While the iontophoresis is going, you can prepare a few of the supplies you'll need after the iontophoresis, like a few of the cotton applicator sticks, the sensor cell, and some water. You can see the iontophoresis progress bar is almost complete. And at completion, it will say decreasing current, and then it will you'll go back to the main screen, and you'll. Okay, so it says iontophoresis complete. Press enter to continue. So I press enter, and now we're back at the main screen with the arrow pointing towards the sweat test. So at this point now I'll put the Nanoduct down, and I'll remove the the red electrode only the red electrode. Keep the black there. So I remove the red electrode. You'll notice some liquid down there. Some patients or parents of patients will say, "Oh, look, there's already sweat." No, that liquid is liquid from the disc itself, and so we need to clean that off and dry it. And so normally what I do is I take a dry cotton swab and dry that liquid really well. And then I'll take a little bit of water and squirt it onto the skin, and then rub that around to wash off the skin so there's no remaining debris or ions left from the disc. Now, one thing that's really important is to use a few of these swabs and make sure you dry that really well after it's been wet, and get underneath the holder all the way around, because some of that liquid can go underneath that holder. You want to just make sure that's really dry. You can see when it's dry. The cotton absorbs the liquid really well. So we're back dry as we should be. So at this point we're ready to apply the sensor cell. So the sensor cell has a small hole in the bottom and that the sweat will funnel into, and then there's a path inside going from this electrode to this other electrode, and it measures the conductivity as it's being collected. I like to put the sensor cell in first before I connect it to the cable, just to make sure the sensor cell is seated properly. So again, I move the ring. I notice a small little piece of dust from the swab. I'll take that out. I move the ring so that these flanges on the sensor cell can go down all the way to the skin properly. I push down, and then I move the ring again 45 degrees, and so it locks it in place. So now with the sensor cell in place, I'll connect the cable to the sensor cell. Now this cable can be connected in two different ways. It can be connected this way or that way. If you look inside, there's actually 3 electrodes that it can plug into. So I plug in like that. Now on the screen, I previously said that it said sweat test. It does not. It says sweat analysis. It's the same process with the arrow pointed towards sweat analysis. I'll press enter. You have the choice to display the reading or suppress the reading. In most clinical applications, you'll choose to suppress the reading. That will mean that there's no values being shown on the screen during the analysis. You don't have parents looking over the shoulder saying, "Oh, what's that? What does that reading mean?" If you're just doing a demonstration, you may choose to do display reading. But in this case, I'll choose display reading. The arrow is pointed towards display reading. I'll choose enter for that. So now the Nanoduct says, "Please wait." and we just need to wait. This time can vary depending on how fast of a sweater the patient is. It will stay on this screen until sweat has gone to the first electrode in that sensor cell. And then you'll see the screen say sweat at first electrode. And then after that, as the sweat progresses to the second electrode, once it hits the second electrode, it will start showing values and the sweating rate, and it will take values for 8 minutes. Now keep in mind we left the black electrode on the skin. If we had removed that, we would not see that sweat at first electrode, and we would not see a sweating rate. And so that's very important to keep the black electrode on the skin so we can see those on the Nanoduct.
Oh.
So now you'll see on the screen it says sweat at first electrode. So the sweat from the patient has gotten to the first electrode in the sensor cell. So now about the same amount of time it took to get that reading, we'll see the screen change and we'll start seeing readings displayed on the screen. Now the sweat has reached the second electrode, and you'll see that the readings start appearing on the screen. So the first reading is 49 millimoles. That is the value, the conductivity value that the sweat is coming from the patient. You also see below she has a sweating rate of 2.9, so that's her sweating rate. It needs to be above 1 in order to be valid according to the CLSI sweat testing guidelines. So we're well above that 1, which is good. Now you can see that reading, the conductivity reading, typically right now it's 47. Typically that reading will go down. The sweat that normally comes out first from a patient is more concentrated. It's just a biological variance that we all have, that sometimes the sweat is more concentrated with ions, and so you'll see the conductivity value be higher at first and go down. You also see at the bottom of the screen a progress bar. That progress bar is set for 8 minutes. You'll also see the first part, there's a little line. So the first 3 minutes of the progress bar is where we collect, we measure the readings, but we don't take that into account for the final reading. The final reading is based on the final 5 minutes of collection, and it's an average of those readings over the 5-minute period. So keep that in mind. We don't average in the higher values typically seen with the first sweat that comes from the patient. We only average the values over the final 5 minutes. Also keep in mind, if you had chosen to suppress the reading, you would not see that conductivity value nor the sweating rate. You'd only be seeing the progress bar at this point. And so those are some difference if you had chosen to suppress the reading. So we're a little bit past halfway in the sweat test. You can see by the progress bar we're past halfway. Her reading is now 42 and holding steady at 42. Again, that's very normal. And we'll just see at the end what the final average value comes out to be. And the sweat test is progressing. Now you'll see that the sweat test is almost complete. The progress bar just has a little bit to go. Okay, now it's finished. It beeps at us. And so it says complete. So I press, so you press enter, and it takes us back to the main screen, and you'll see an arrow that says recall reading. So I press enter on that, and it will give us the final reading. Her final value was 43. Again, with a sweating rate of 2.9. So that's the value that you would report back to the doctor for the sweat conductivity test. That recall reading is important because if you had suppressed the values, that's the only way that you can get that value back, is by doing the recall reading. So at this point, the sweat test is complete, and we can disconnect the cables and the electrodes from the patient. So if I want, I can turn off the Nanoduct and just disconnect everything from the patient. Normally, just untwist the rings on the holders, take everything out, take the straps off by, again, just popping it off of that post. Okay. And now you'll see there's a little bit of liquid left over, so we'll just wipe that off for the patient so that they don't have any worry about it. So again, a little Kim wipe and some water, just wipe that off. Their skin will be indented like that. The indent seems to go away in about a day. That's normal. You'll also want to take out the discs from the electrodes. Just pop those out. And at this point, using a little cotton swab, we like to just wipe those with some water or some isopropyl alcohol just to clean off those. And then with a dry one, dry it off so it's ready for the next patient. So I hope that you found this demonstration informative, and it will help you in the future as you demonstrate and use the Nanoduct. And thank you for being our customer, and let us know if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you. As part of this training, I wanted to show you one more thing that can help you demonstrate the Nanoduct to a potential customer or even to parents that maybe are concerned about using the Nanoduct on their baby. That's the demo mode. So right now the Nanoduct is off. I'm going to show you how to turn on the demo mode, and you do that by pressing the select button and on at the same time. Keep holding the select button, and it will go to the setup menu. So it's a different menu than we had before, and you'll see the arrow has some options: exit, configure, self-test, demo mode. Configure is where you can change the language. We have a few languages available. Self-test is described in the manual. We don't really use that too often, but the demo mode is a helpful tool, again, in demonstrating to potential customers or patients. So I'll select down to demo mode and press enter. So now this takes us to a screen. It does say demo mode at the top, but the screen looks very similar to the normal screen that they have if it's functioning properly. And so you have check controls, iontophoresis, sweat analysis, and recall reading. I'll skip past the sweat controls and I'll skip past the check controls and select down to iontophoresis. So now at iontophoresis, I can show a customer or a patient what the instrument will do during iontophoresis without being connected to the patient. So it does the increase in current. I can hit enter and it skips ahead to full current, and with the progress bar. Again, that would take 2.5 minutes, but if someone doesn't want to take a lot of time, you can hit enter again, and it goes to decreasing current. And enter again, it says iontophoresis is complete. Enter again. Now the arrow is down at sweat analysis, and so we can enter into there. And we have the choice to suppress or display the readings. So again, this could be useful if you want to really see the difference between suppress and display the readings. In this case, I'll select display readings again. So now it says please wait, just like it would, but just like I showed you before with the patient, it's waiting for sweat to come into the sensor cell. If I let this go, it would take a few minutes like we normally would expect, or I can expedite it by pressing enter. And I'll press enter. Now you see sweat at first electrode. I'll press enter again, and now it's showing a value of 27 and a sweat rate of 2.1. Again, those are just random values that appear as you're showing this to a customer, and it has a progress bar, the 8-minute progress bar, like you normally would expect if you were actually collecting sweat. And you can just continue to hit enter, and it automatically progresses it through the next step all the way to completion. And when you're complete, just like a normal test, you can recall the reading and see what the reading was. And when you're done with the demo mode, you can select the exit and exit out of demo mode and the setup menu and get back to the normal screen where it would require you to have it connected to a patient for any of those progresses to occur, the iontophoresis or the sweat analysis. Again, thank you for your time, and I hope you find this to be informative.